Hello there everybody, and hello from Florida. My name is Roy. I'm the owner of Telechron Time. Some of you might know me. I do my business basically on Etsy, etsy.com. That's E-T-S-Y, etsy.com. Feel free to stop over or visit my shop. But today I'm going to do something special. I got this email from Diane out in Littleton, Colorado. I'm going to read this real quick to you. She says, hello, I have my grandparents' Revere Westminster clock. It hummed, so my husband took it to someone he knew could fix it. It came back with the hands hanging at 6 o'clock and not working at all. This clock has such memorable value, can it be fixed? Revere doesn't sell parts any longer that I know of. Thanks, Diane. Well, Diane, the good news is that I love working on family heirloom clocks. And yes, I think we could get this clock going. I did take the bezel off because the second hand on here you can see is just swinging. I don't know what this guy did to it. When I pulled it off, I noticed that the shaft that inserts of the clock is broken. But you know what? Hang on a second here. Okay, these are all Revere clock hands. And look at here. I have a good hand with a good post on it. And just out of curiosity, I'm going to see if I can't get that in there. Boom, that's in there. So you might think the clock is going to work, but wait till you hear this when I plug it in. Ready? That is the sound of a failing rotor. Okay, and the rotor is the device that actually drives this particular clock. They were great mechanisms. They started making them back in the 1920s. Some of the clocks that I work on have the original rotors from the 20s and the 30s. It's just amazing technology, well ahead of its time during that particular period. Just out of curiosity, you can see now the second hand is turning on this, even though the clock is running very, very slow. Another thing that I noticed on this clock were the chimes in the back. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this or not when I drop them. Listen for the third chime. Oh, it didn't hit. There it goes. It's just more of a kerplunk. So there's a broken chime rod in here, or a cracked rod, so that's going to need to be replaced. There's a rotor, by the way. That's the little item that's making all of that noise. But another thing that was kind of disconcerting here is when I tried to activate the chimes, you could see the minute hand is not pointing at either the 9 or the 12 where it should be. This is a good indication that this guy did something with this minute hand, because the minute hands on all Revere clocks were notched. They were like a fingerprint of the clock, meaning that it was made especially for this particular clock. So you can't take a minute hand from another Revere clock and just stick it on here, because it's never going to point correctly. So I'm not sure exactly what this guy did, whether he tried to replace it with a different hand or if he bent the shaft on there. I'm going to have to take a closer look at that and see if I can't repair that for him. But before we begin, let me give you a quick history on these R-913s, because without a doubt, these clocks were a total cash cow for Walter Herscheta, who owned the Revere Clock Company. Now, remember, Walter Herscheta, not only did he own the Revere Clock Company, but he also owned the Herscheta Clock Company, which was in existence long before Revere was. The Revere Clock Company also made Westminster clocks for General Electric. General Electric did not manufacture their clocks. Revere made them for them. Okay, now this particular clock, production on this started around 1944 and 1945 and continued right through 1980. It was so popular that Walter Herscheta not only carried this in the Revere nameplate, but also carried it under the Herscheta nameplate also. It was the same exact clock, but if you bought one of these with the Herscheta nameplate, you were going to pay about $5 or $7 more just for the prestige of owning that name. Walter Herscheta did not share this design with General Electric. You will not find this with a General Electric nameplate on it. Okay, but these are extremely great clocks. They were very popular because of their price point. They have a very small footprint on it, and not only that, but they have great sound quality also. This is a wonderful, wonderful tambour, and the sound quality on it is very, very nice for the size of the clock. This particular clock is in very, very nice condition. I could tell it's been stored correctly. The people did try to take care of it. The wood on this, you can see, has no scratches, no dents, no real hard blemishes. The only thing I notice on this particular clock is that the wood is dry. There's a certain amount of embedded dirt and dust on there also, which I'm going to be able to remove. So I mean, other than that, it really has no physical issues. The bezel on it was nice and clean. It is starting to discolor in certain areas, so I'm probably going to end up stripping this down and repolishing it. But I think at the very end we're going to have a really, really nice clock. So let's get to work on it. I got the minute hand off of this, and that guy that was working on this clock, he just butchered this thing. You could take a look right here. I don't know what he was doing. I think he broke the bushing on here and tried to solder it back on, but right there, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but right there you could see the notch, okay, that goes into the shaft on this particular clock, and that's what makes it unique. So I got a real problem here because I'm going to have to try to find another minute hand that I could adjust the bushing to actually work on this clock. So we'll see what I come up with. Well, I had to go through 3 different hands before I actually found one that would fit on this particular shaft. The fortunate thing about it was only about 3 minutes off of the actual time, so that was a big plus. I did move the bushing on it, and let's see. Now, even though the plug's not plugged in, when this gets to 10 o'clock, you should hear a loud clicking sound. There it is, okay, and you can see now this hand is pointing straight up 12. So that clicking sound, that's the sound the clock makes when it activates the chime. So let's try the quarter after position here. Perfect. Perfect. Now, obviously I won't know for sure if I have it really perfect until after the clock is running, but so far this is a good indication that I'm going to be able to have this clock chime at the correct times. I think I forgot to mention, I dated this particular clock to 1950. You know, a lot of people always say, what's the best Telechron-powered clock to get started with? If I had to make a recommendation, the R-913 clock that I'm working on here, this is by far the best value that you're going to find in Telechron-powered clocks, because you're getting the best of both worlds. Not only are you getting a Telechron rotor and parts in this particular clock, but you're also getting a clock that chimes every 15 minutes. And the nice thing about it is it chimes on real chime rods, not some quartz battery cheap sounding thing. So this is a clock I would recommend that you could probably find on eBay for under $50. Obviously none of them are going to have been serviced. This is what I do. But I mean, if you're looking for a very, very high quality timepiece for an affordable price, this is the way to go. This particular chime rod here probably has a hairline crack somewhere behind the block here going into the screws. You could hear it. Let me press down on this and hear that? So on these particular chime rods, you just can't replace just one chime rod, because all 4 of these chime rods were made to be in tune with each other. So if you just replace a chime rod with a single rod, it's still going to be out of tune. It's still going to sound bad. You actually have to replace all 4 with a tune set. So obviously I want to work with the original finish on this clock. This clock is in very nice condition. I cleaned half of it, and you can see how much dirt, dust, embedded smoke damage. I mean, all of this gets accumulated on these clocks over a period of time. It all has to come off. Also too, and this is not uncommon, I found paint specks, okay? So anything on these finishes, you actually have to take them off, make sure that the wood is absolutely clean, but you don't want to damage the original finish. You don't want to strip it or use, you know, any type of really aggressive stripping material on this. So I'm going to go ahead and keep cleaning this clock, and then we'll go ahead and oil it. I did want to point out on the back, I did do some sanding over here on this. This had a lot of open areas on it, and by sanding this, what I'm doing is I'm opening these old wounds back up in hopes that the oil will get back into there and bring these scratches back to the original color of the wood. So we'll see what happens very shortly. Now that I got it nice and clean, I'm going to start oiling this clock. And to begin with, because of the fact that the original finish on this is a little bit rough, I'm going to start with a piece of 4/0 steel wool, and I'm just going to work the oil in, and then real quickly I'm going to take it off. So we'll see how that goes. And you can see this area around the hole here. This is kind of cleared up a little bit, but I think it should get better as we progress. So let's get started on this and see what happens. Get a nicer view of this clock now with just the first coat of oil put in there. You can actually see the graining now on this. Take a look at how beautiful the graining is. That's one of the notable things about these R-913s. The mahoganies on these are just absolutely beautiful. But you could actually see the clock is starting to take shape even after one coat of oil. On the back there, it's still going to need more oil. I could see that, but you could see that all the marks, all the chip marks and stuff, they all blended in. So those have become a lot less visible. So again, we're working with the original finish on this, which is important if you want to keep the originality of your clock. You never want to use things like polyurethane or spray type varnishes or anything like that that seals the wood. That's bad. I just recently did one of those a couple of weeks ago where somebody took the liberty of using a paintbrush and some polyurethane and coated the clock with it, and what that does is it just seals in all the dirt and the dust and the old waxes and everything else, and there was no way I could get to the original finish without having to strip the entire clock off, or the entire clock. So I mean, I had to work with what I had there, but you can see there's already a big difference in the appearance of this clock with just a little bit of work. But we're going to continue to work with this over the course of the next few days and really see if we can't get this clock to pop. Welcome back, everybody, and Happy New Year. Today is the first day of January 2021. Already I've started to take apart and inspect this particular movement. For anybody that's interested, this is what a B rotor looks like. This is the little culprit that was making all the noise in that particular clock. I was looking at this movement, and this just shows all the typical signs of not being serviced for 50 or 60 years. You can see there's a lot of dried oil in there. There's a lot of dirt throughout the movement on both sides. I could tell by looking at the little clips on the inside of here that these have never been taken off and oiled. So yeah, this is pretty typical. But what really concerned me here was these two particular parts here. This part here, this gear is supposed to sit on top of that tripod and spin independently. But what happens is that the oils on this tripod dry out, turns to an adhesive, okay, and an abrasive. And what it does is that it actually digs into the arms on this particular gear, and you can see all 5 of these arms are pretty well worn. As a matter of fact, I inspected it, and there's only about maybe 20 to 30% metal left on there, so this gear is not going to work right. So I did prepare another gear. This is the same exact gear, and you can see I have this one polished down to a mere finish, and I'll do the same thing to the tripod also. But another thing that happens on this is that as the tripod and the gear stick together, I want to just kind of turn this around here so let's see if you can get a view of that. The tripod will actually rub right into the plate, and you can see right here, this is where the tripod would mount to right here, and you can see as the tripod would spin, it's actually making a circle all the way around, cutting right into the brass. So I'm going to try to polish this out also to make sure it's smooth again too. So Diane, I just wanted to tell you, I'm not going to be charging you for any of these extra parts, the gear, the hands and stuff like that. That's going to be my contribution to your little heirloom piece here. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have said that, because now I have a feeling I'm going to get a clock from somebody that they bought off of the internet with some sob story like, you know, my grandfather had to dig ditches with a spoon 65 hours a week in order to buy this clock for my dying grandmother. You know, these movements are another reason why everybody should have one of these clocks. These particular movements were made of nothing but solid brass on both sides, and all the gears, everything on here was just of an extremely high quality. As a matter of fact, if the Revere Clock Company and the Telechron-Clock Company were still in business today and you had to buy one of these with a rotor and coil, it would probably run in the area of about $350 just for the movement. I mean, that's how well built these things are. So here's the plate with all the parts removed off of it. One thing I noticed, there was a lot of new oil on this clock. probably the result of the guy that Diane had wrenching on this before she sent it to me. The issue is I don't know where he was oiling, because all the parts that I took off that needed oil, they were dry. So, but again, I just want to flip this over here and you can get a better idea of the circle, but that tripod actually cut into the brass right there. Welcome back, everybody. Now that I have this movement totally clean and ready for assembly, I think it's time to get started, but I don't know, a lot of parts and pieces of this thing. I hope I can remember how to put it back together. Well, let's get started and see what happens. Well, I just got done installing the movement and attaching a new power cord to it, so now comes the moment of truth. So we're going to go ahead and plug this in and let's see what happens. And I can see right away the wheels are turning in there, so the clock is running. Let's see if we can get it to chime. Not bad. That was a half-hour chime, and let's find out what time the clock should be set for. Sounds really nice. Great sound out of these R-913s. One o'clock. Easy. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and assemble the rest of this clock and we'll take a look at the finished product shortly. Well, here we go, folks, our finished product. If you take a look, you'll see the clock is running. is running quiet as a church mouse. And as a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and click the chime on here. Overall, the clock came out very beautifully, don't you agree? Again, this is all 100% original finish on this clock. And you know, I'll tell you, you could actually buy Westminster Clocks online. Howard Miller makes a nice line, but they don't use American-made movements. They're actually made from Germany. You could spend $600, $700, $800, even more money for a Westminster clock, and I guarantee you, they won't last and run as long as this particular clock here will. Again, these R-913s are a wonderful, wonderful value. You can pick them up very inexpensively. If you want, send them to me. I can get your clock looking and running like this. It's been a pleasure to have you here. I know this has been a long video, but I hope you found it informative, and I look forward to seeing you on my next video. Take care. Bye-bye.